In 1983, David Bowie, whilst touring Australia, was interviewed by Molly Meldrum and talked about how much he admired John Lennon for the way his lyrics and songwriting really cut through. And in one beautiful moment during that interview, David Bowie recalled something that John Lennon had once said to him. "It's very easy. All you have to do is say what you mean, make it rhyme, and put a backbeat to it." And sure, when you say it like that, it does sound easy and almost unhelpful to us mere mortals. But if we examine that statement a little more and zoom in on each of those three elements, perhaps we can discover some of the secrets to John Lennon's incredible songwriting. So in this video, I'm going to break down those three elements, go through some specific songs in John's catalogue to really bring these concepts to life, and find out if it is, after all, very easy. Number one, say what you mean. We can interpret this a number of different ways, but for practical reasons, let's start with this idea that if you're going to write a song about something, a good place to start is to write about a feeling that you have on a particular subject. Because one of the traps we can fall into as songwriters is moving too quickly through the process, trying to focus on lyrics and chords and melodies and rhythms all at the same time before we're really clear on what this song is all about, what it is we have to say. What we can do with this say what you mean statement is divide it further into two parts. The first part is find out what you want to say, and then the second part is say it like you mean it. In other words, once you discover what the central message is of this song, don't hold back. Say it courageously and with conviction. Let your song be the vehicle to take this idea out into the world. If we look at the lyrics to Imagine, one of John's most iconic songs, you can see this point in action. And in these lyrics, it's clear what John's point is. It's clear what he's upset with. It's clear the change he is seeking. So we hear John making this plea to humanity to join together and put aside their differences. And importantly, we hear and feel this message throughout the entire song. And both the clarity and the consistency of this message cannot be underestimated or overlooked. It is one of the biggest challenges we as songwriters face, and we face it for two reasons. Firstly, when we're writing a song, we have the backstory, we have the context. It's all in our heads. We forget that others don't. We forget that no one else knows what we're thinking. We hope or delude ourselves into believing that when someone hears this song for the first time, they'll somehow understand the cryptic references and the in-jokes. They'll have empathy for our main character and understand why they're saying the things they're saying. But the reality is, none of that is true. Because telling a story to a room full of people and writing a song that goes out into the world are two very different things. When we're telling a story, we're able to pause, we're able to clarify, we're able to take questions, go back over a certain detail. When we write a song and send it out to the world, we send it out on its own. We can't be there, standing over the shoulder of everyone who's listening, explaining that cryptic metaphor in verse 2 or that slightly ambiguous twist at the end of the chorus. So when a song like Imagine lands with such impact and ripples through generations, it is in part because of the clarity of that message, because the lyricist has found a way to say what they mean and say it with such conviction, the rest of the world stops and takes notice. The second reason songwriters can get themselves into trouble with this issue is when they deliberately make the lyrics ambiguous. We actually catch ourselves in the act of deliberately making things unclear, either because they're too personal, or because we want to protect the feelings and identities of people that are close to us, or perhaps because we haven't really investigated how we truly feel about the subject we're writing about. Whatever the reason, saying what you mean carries with it a personal responsibility to stand by what it is you say and mean. And sometimes this occurs in a very public setting. In his song Luck of the Irish, Lennon criticises the history of British rule in Ireland, using some fairly strong language to make his feelings known. A land full of beauty and wonder was raped by the British brigands. So this is clearly a political song, and Lennon wrote lots of political songs. In this one, he's taking the side of Ireland, a country he declares himself very fond of, and in fact, he even planned to retire there. However, Beatle biographer Chris Ingham describes the song as sentimental, condescending poetry, and much like political propaganda. So saying what you mean is easy to say, but doing it is a whole other thing, because it often invites criticism and judgment and backlash and justifications of all sorts that a lot of songwriters would just rather avoid. And these situations are certainly more likely to arise in political songs. But what if we shift our focus to something a little more intimate, perhaps a love song? Jealous Guy, recorded in 1971, is a perfect example of this. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry that I made you cry. Oh, I didn't want to hurt you. I'm just a jealous guy. These lyrics feel raw. They feel honest. They're self-deprecating. And it's almost as if we're eavesdropping on John talking to his lover. Talking to journalist David Sheff in 1980, John revealed the lyrics explain themselves clearly. I was a very jealous, possessive guy toward everything, a very insecure male. On BBC's Women's Hour radio show, John continued to reflect on his changing view of relationships. When you're actually in love with somebody, you tend to be jealous and want to own them and possess them 100%, which I do. I love Yoko. I want to possess her completely. That's the danger, that you want to possess them to death. So in Jealous Guy, John is really expressing some very honest feelings. And whether we agree with those feelings or not, it's fascinating to hear him use the vehicle of songwriting as a way to work through his beliefs on relationships and love and his own insecurities. The second part, make it rhyme. John has another famous quote on this topic: tell the truth and make it rhyme. And for songwriters, there is no avoiding it. Rhyme is a big deal. It is what separates lyrics and poetry from everyday language and is really one of the most powerful tools in the songwriter's toolbox. But saying make it rhyme is like saying paint it blue. Which shade of blue? There are so many shades of blue, and each of them has a different mood and creates a different effect. So how do we choose the shade of blue or the type of rhyme that is appropriate for our song? As a very quick overview, let's just talk about rhyme schemes and the notation that goes with them. Mostly when we talk about rhyme, we're really focusing on end-line rhymes, the words that land at the very end of each line. And we learn rhyme schemes very early on. We learn them as children, funnily enough, in nursery rhymes. So in nursery rhymes, we often find 4-line stanzas with very stable rhyme schemes. For example, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. That is a classic AABB rhyme scheme. Very stable, 4 lines, 2 rhyming couplets, one after the other. The other thing to consider is rhyme type, and rhyme type really slides along a scale between perfect and imperfect rhyme. Now, in musical theatre, perfect rhyme is really the only rhyme that counts. In a lot of rap, hip hop, and contemporary songwriting, however, imperfect rhyme is used frequently and very effectively. So looking at Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, high and sky are perfect rhymes. If we were to choose an imperfect rhyme for high, we might go with night. It still has the I sound in the middle, and that's what allows the 2 words to be paired together. But the hard T sound on night makes it imperfect, and it also introduces a lot of tension. So rhyme really does serve some very important functions. It helps the language to flow. It creates a sonic roadmap for the ear as we're guided through the lyrics. And it gives the songwriter the ability to create tension and then resolve that tension. And John was clearly aware of all of these functions, but the best songwriters also know how to make little variations with these techniques, twist them ever so slightly to create something new and interesting. So if we go back to Jealous Guy and look at the rhyme scheme, past and fast, perfect rhyming couplet. I began to lose control, I began to lose control. That's not a rhyming line, that's just a repeated line. I didn't mean to hurt you, I'm sorry that I made you cry. I didn't want to hurt you, I'm just a jealous guy. Here we have the rhyming couplet split into C, D, C, D, and this is also a very stable type of rhyme scheme. At the start of the second verse, we hear a beautiful little variation. I was feeling insecure. You might not love me anymore. Now, insecure and anymore don't sound like they rhyme. A perfect rhyme that would go well with insecure is pure. But John's not necessarily looking for a perfect rhyme. He's looking for the word that expresses what he has to say. So when you listen to the recording, you can hear him deliver this rhyming couplet as insecure anymore. He lengthens the anymore, and instead of going oh, he makes it more like a Because every songwriter and singer has this ability to shape the vowels and shape the sounds in their mouth and take what would normally be very jarring and imperfect rhymes and actually blend them together so they sound quite close. This is such an important thing for us as songwriters to remember. If you ever find yourself in the songwriting process hunting for lines that rhyme together but don't necessarily express the idea that you want to express, this is a good time to stop and go back and discover what it is you really want to say, and then find the appropriate words to serve that message. Imagine gives us another insight into how John thinks about rhyme scheme. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. So line 1 and 3 don't rhyme with each other or anything else. But line 2 and 4 rhyme. And this is a classic rhyme scheme. But then we get this little tag. Imagine all the people living for today. And people and today are unrhymed. And because they're unrhymed, they're less stable. So the whole structure of this song is actually quite unstable because a majority of the lines aren't rhyming with anything else. And this reveals a rhyme pattern that John used a lot in his lyric writing. Lucy in the Sky is another great example of this pattern. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly, a girl with kaleidoscope eyes. So there we have skies and eyes again, line 2 and 4 rhyming, but lines 1 and 3 are again unrhymed with themselves or anything else. Then we get cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over your head. Look for the girl with the sun in her eyes and she's gone. Green, head, gone. They're not rhyming with each other or any of the lines in the previous section. So here's a song where we're looking at 7 lines of lyrics and only 2 of them rhyme. And the question you might be asking is, why is John Lennon only rhyming a few lines and leaving the rest unrhymed? And to answer that, we want to go back to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, because for a lot of us, the rhyme schemes we learn as children are the rhyme schemes we keep using as we get older. So if left unchecked, we can find that a lot of our songs have this AABB or ABAB or even XAXA rhyme scheme repeatedly used. And the problem with that is it's very predictable and it sounds like the writing of a much younger person. So John knows that in shaping his language to make it sound mature, to make it so that it's not predictable, to create the element of surprise by giving us what we think will be a rhyming couplet, but in fact what we hear is 2 unrhymed lines. All of this adds up to language that is not only more conversational, replicating the patterns of everyday speech, it's also unique when compared to a lot of other songwriters. So when John says make it rhyme, what he really means is just make some of it rhyme. Don't feel you have to have a series of rhyming couplets one after the other, giving that closure and resolution in a very predictable way. Instead, pick your lines carefully, know that a little bit of rhyme goes a long way, and leave the rest as conversational, unrhymed language. The third part, put a backbeat to it. Now, a fair question to ask is, what is the difference between a beat and a backbeat? By definition, the backbeat is a steady, pronounced rhythm stressing the 2nd and 4th beats of a 4-beat measure. So if we're thinking in terms of drums, the kick comes on the 1 and the 3, the snare comes on the 2 and the 4. And the backbeat really started in jazz and then moved to blues and R&B and eventually into rock. And when you hear gospel music and people clapping in time, they're clapping on the 2 and the 4, they're replicating that snare. So I think it's fair to say that the backbeat groove is probably the most common and popular form we have in contemporary music. But is this what John meant when he said put a backbeat to it? Was he specifically thinking about the 2 and the 4? Or was he saying it in a more general term? Was he really just meaning put a good groove to it? Either way, I think the more interesting point is to consider how crucial John believes rhythm to be. He's included it as one of his 3 elements in this formula. He's not talking about melody. He's not talking about harmony. Of course, they are crucial. And John is responsible for some of the most beautiful melody and chord progressions we've ever heard. But he's made this point about songwriting being easy when you first focus on lyrics and then focus on rhythm. But I want to keep talking about the importance of the term backbeat for a minute, because interestingly, the only way you can have an emphasis on the 2 and the 4 is if you have a 4-beat measure, which means we have to be thinking in 4/4. So does this mean that when John's thinking about rhythm, he's really just thinking in 4/4? Well, if we look at John's catalogue of songs, first focusing on those he wrote with the Beatles, in this list you see some of the biggest hits of all time. From Me to You, She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, A Hard Day's Night, Ticket to Ride, Help, Day Tripper, We Can Work It Out, The Ballad of John and Yoko, Love Me Do, Come Together, Something, Please Please Me, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, Norwegian Wood, Nowhere Man, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, I Am the Walrus, Happiness is a Warm Gun, All You Need Is Love, Across the Universe, Strawberry Fields Forever, Don't Let Me Down. And out of that incredible collection of songs, only 2 of them are not using 4/4. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away and Norwegian Wood are both using the 6/8 swung feel. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds also has a swung 6/8 feel in the verse, but the chorus is very much a driving 4/4 pattern. And some of these songs, like All You Need Is Love, often drop beats to create a 7/4 feel. But again, in the chorus of that song, we hear that driving pulse of 4/4 loud and clear. Turning our attention to the songs he wrote as a solo artist, we have Imagine, Woman, Give Peace a Chance, Just Like Starting Over, Watching the Wheels, Working Class Hero, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, Jealous Guy, Happy Christmas, War Is Over, Instant Karma, Mind Games, Give Me Some Truth, Beautiful Boy, Mother, Nobody Told Me, Oh My Love, Crippled Inside, and Number 9, Dream. And out of that list, we have only 3 songs that are not in 4/4. Just Like Starting Over, Working Class Hero, and Happy Christmas, War Is Over. Those also have a swung feel in 6/8 or 12/8, depending on how you're counting it. So yes, it seems that John does have a preference for writing in 4/4, which makes perfect sense because the Beatles really were a perfect blend of R&B, pop, and rock. And all three of those genres have 4/4 as the beating heart of that music. And it's important for us to understand the nuance of different time feels. One of the reasons dance music and rock loves 4/4 is because it has that driving energy, it has that forward propulsion. In contrast, if we look at a time feel like 6/8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see it has that side-to-side motion. It doesn't have the drive, the forward push. And a lot of songwriters have a love-hate relationship with 4/4 because they know it's the most popular time signature. And yes, if you only write songs in 4/4 and write them around the same BPM, you will find that your songs all start to sound a little bit same. So exploring other time signatures is a really important part of the songwriter's journey. But we forget how versatile 4/4 can be. We forget how much variation we can create with those 4 beats within that bar. All of those were in 4/4, and even though some of them were at very similar tempos, there are so many other variables going on with the song that we don't think they sound similar at all. Even though I was just playing the chords, you could still hear that each of them had their own unique sound and feel. One of the things we're always trying to work out is how do some songwriters through history make it look so easy? How do they consistently produce these works of genius over generations? And without knowing for sure, perhaps for John, it was his clarity of mind and his ability to either consciously or subconsciously distill the world of songwriting down to this simple formula. I, for one, will be trying this formula out and seeing what the results are. And if any of you try it out as well, please let us know what works, what doesn't work. And if there's any specific areas you'd like us to go deeper on in future videos, please put those in the comments too. Happy songwriting. Bye.